People, can you please stop turning perfectly good 911s into rally or safari builds? Unless, of course, you're going to rally race it, then okay, fine, that's cool. All right, I know, being a typical driver, I should love the concept of Safari 911s, like the new Porsche 911 Dakar Edition. And I do, kind of. But I also hate them. So today I'm going to explain why I'm so conflicted over Safari 911s, and maybe some of you feel similarly. Or maybe I'm just an emotional wreck about these things. It's a love hate relationship. I think this is because while I love the idea of driving a 911 on dirt roads, I don't love the idea that extensive modifications make it a lot less like a 911. First of all, I'll say up front, I've never driven a Safari style 911, but I do own a 911 and I've driven rally cars. So I have a sense of what's good about both a 911 and a rally car, but they don't go together quite like peanut butter and chocolate, despite what many people believe. And every time you see a Rally 911 for sale on Bring a Trailer or some other site, I think that's a sign of an owner admitting that the car wasn't quite what they expected either. But the Safari build 911 trend has been growing a lot over the past few years, and now Porsche has released this new 911 Dakar, which really embraces that ethos. And Porsche legitimately has done well in rally races in the past, including the actual Paris Dakar Rally, which is probably one of the most grueling tests of man and machine in the world. But just because you can doesn't mean you should turn your 911 into a safari car. All right, let's start with what I like about these cars, and at the end, I'll give some critiques of the new 911 Dakar specifically. I also think that maybe there's a happy middle ground that gets you all the fun with a little of the compromise. All right, so the first positive, they're unusual. I like things that are different and that stand out from the crowd. 911s are actually pretty common cars, but a lifted 911 with big tires is definitely atypical. It's also really uncommon to see a 911 going off road. It's outside of its normal habitat. And to me, that's both cool and interesting. The second thing, they actually look pretty awesome. Of all the sports cars out there, I feel like Porsche is one of the few manufacturers that can pull this off and it looks really good. Have you seen the off road Lamborghini? No, not that one. This one. Yikes. Third, I have to imagine that these are pretty comfortable to drive around in terms of suspension compliance. I mean, a 911 is already pretty comfortable, but with more suspension travel and high sidewall tires, it should be even better. Again, aside from the tire noise and the wind noise from the extra roof racks and stuff. Another thing is you can have more fun at low speeds. I've seen this firsthand. There's a guy who likes to attend the same drives that I go on. They're rallies, but they're not that kind of rally. They're more like a driving tour. And in my modern 911, you have to be going pretty fast to make some of these roads feel interesting. But I see this guy, and he's smiling and having a great time in his Safari 993, really at any speed. So shout out to Peter B 993. Go follow him on Instagram. Another thing about a Safari 911 is that you don't have to worry about it getting chips and scratches and stuff. At least in theory, you don't. But if you've ever been to a Cars and Coffee or a Porsche Owners Club meetup, you'll know how OCD many of the owners are about their cars. Are they really going to drive their car off road through gravel and mud and snow? No way. They don't even let their car get dirty. How many dirty cars have you seen at a Cars and Coffee? In my opinion, a Safari 911 should always be dirty. I do know one guy named Gen who regularly takes his Rothmans 911 off road, and in general, Porsche owners enjoy driving their cars and they rack up more miles than owners of other sports car brands. I'll link my video on this topic above. Check that out. And if a Safari 911 is made for driving, it's most likely going to find an audience within the Porsche community. Durability is another factor. Although 911s are already quite durable and many have over 100,000 miles, putting on beefier components means that it should last even longer, right? All right, so those are the pros, the positives about a Safari build for your 911. But what are the arguments against it? First, let's talk purely numbers. What percent of your driving time is on-road versus off-road? Think about the miles on your odometer. How many will be in off-road conditions? 1% of the miles? Maybe 5%? For most of us, it's probably pretty low, unless you're really using it in rally competition, or maybe you live somewhere where there just aren't that many good roads and you have to drive on dirt roads frequently. Or if it's a second or third car that you only use when you go off road. But the thing is, once you do the conversion, the car is set up for off roading 100% of the time, meaning that it's going to be great off road, but it's likely going to be a lot worse when it's on road. Maybe if you have a second set of wheels and tires to swap, it'd be a bit better in both situations. But overall, you've kind of compromised the wonderful 911 driving experience. Sure, you've created a new driving experience, but if you loved how the 911 drove before, you definitely won't have that same thing. It's not better or worse, but it's different. Let me give you an example. On Instagram, there's this guy Brock who goes by the username 996roadtrip, and if you don't follow him, you should. He takes his 996 Carrera 4S on all kinds of awesome adventures, many of which are actually off-road. He's not precious about the car, and he puts it through all kinds of abuse. But don't be distracted by the rooftop tent and the dirt all over the car. Look closely at his suspension and wheels. They're stock. It's not a safari build. So this means that when he's doing a road trip, the car still grips and handles like a 911 is supposed to for the 98% of time that he's on a paved surface. And for the other 2% of the time that he's off-road, it can do that too. Well, sometimes I've seen him get stuck, but overall it seems to work okay. Another thing to think about is the noise, and I mean road noise, tire noise, wind noise. Have you ever driven a truck or SUV with big knobby tires? They are really, really loud. And a standard 911, even from generations ago, is actually a pretty civilized place to spend time and soak up a lot of miles. They've always been cars that combine sportiness, practicality, and comfort. But once you turn it into a rally 911, you have to compromise, especially in the comfort and noise area. I've mentioned this already before, but are you really going to use it like a rally car is meant to be used? Are you okay with the rock chips, the scratches, and other damage? If there's one thing I know about rally driving, it's that in rally, the entire car is a consumable item, just like the tires or the brakes. Oh, well, you aren't doing actual rally racing, you say. Okay, that's fine. You just like to go off-road, sometimes have a little bit of fun. All right, fair enough, but you're still going to really put it through some abuse, even if you're just going through light off-road stuff. If your Safari 911 has pristine, polished paint, then you're actually kind of just a poser and you're doing this whole thing wrong. But maybe this guy Paul from Auto Kennel has it figured out. He has this backdated 1980s 911 called La Tortuga, and I would call it a mild safari build. He takes the car on loads of rallies, including long stretches of freeway driving to get to the starting point of the rally. The car has over 335,000 miles on the engine, and it is as reliable as can be. He also has it set up to be, decent off-road. The nuance between this and a full safari or rally 911 is pretty subtle, but the mods are more in the realm of durability and reliability than off-roading. As you can see, his suspension isn't crazy jacked up. It might be a little bit higher than a stock 911 of that era, but not much. The tires are performance all seasons. Again, nothing crazy. It has skid plates to avoid damage from being so low when it's going off-road. And best of all, it looks like it's fun to drive on any surface and in any conditions. Maybe this actually is the Goldilocks of the Safari-style 911s. Okay, so let's talk about the 911 Dakar that Porsche is building as a straight-from-the-factory Safari 911. Personally, I do think it's really cool. It's got good power, it's got ground clearance, and I just think it'd be a lot of fun. And Porsche has a proven all-wheel drive system. This one should be even better with some of the adjustable electronic modes. And the interior seems uncommonly nice for something designed to be driven off-road. But I suppose that's also part of the allure of something like a Land Rover, having a nice, luxurious environment to insulate you from the harshness of the outdoors. Especially in the woods, or the desert, or the snow. The 911 Dakar does have reinforced and protected body panels, including more durable bumpers. And they've gotten rid of tons of the active aero stuff that would be likely to break in off-road conditions or maybe just not function so well when it's covered in mud and sand. So in some ways, the 911 Dakar could be the ultimate daily driver 911. After all, it's kind of like a Macan or a Cayenne, but with a 911 body, right? And Porsche sells more SUVs than all of its sports cars combined. But it's not a Macan or a Cayenne, and it can't really be used like one. Even though I am a staunch advocate that you can daily drive a normal 911, and I do daily drive mine, including taking my kids to school. So you'd think that that would apply here too with the Dakar 911, but they've done some things to it to make it less useful as a daily driver, such as removing the back seats. And the other main thing is that it's both rare and expensive. The 911 Dakar is priced at around 250,000 US dollars. That's $250,000. And people have trouble daily driving expensive cars usually because, well, stuff happens. Shopping carts crash into them. You curb the wheels while you're parking. Okay, maybe that's less of an issue in this particular case because you could just drive over the curb. But because of its rarity, it's likely to become a collectible car and increase in value, if you can even get your hands on one. Only 2,500 of these are going to be produced. Knowing that, it's going to be hard to justify not keeping it in pristine condition and instead subjecting it to the rigors of daily use, let alone the horror of taking it off-road. Have you ever driven down a smooth gravel road at speed and heard all the little rocks getting kicked up by the tires? Yeah, that makes most people cringe. Are you going to do that with a $250,000 car? But Porsche, one thing that I feel like you really missed on your rally car is the extended range fuel tank, which is a low-cost option. It's only $230 on pretty much every other model of 911, and it increases the fuel capacity from around 17 gallons to nearly 24 gallons. That'd be pretty handy when you're out in the middle of nowhere. The extended fuel tank is not just to extend your sessions at the racetrack. All of that said, the Safari 911s are all about the driving experience, and they fully immerse you in it. In theory, they're going to slide around sooner on both gravel and pavement, which can be a lot of fun. So maybe it is the right choice for a lot of people. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. That was my wishy-washy opinion on Safari-style 911s. I love them. I hate them. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.